This is really exciting. People came. It makes me feel happy when people show up. All right, so it's 7:01. And Tracy, what do you think? Should we get started?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All righty. Okay, so welcome everybody. We hope everyone is enjoying their Monday evening. It's the week before Thanksgiving, and I'm sure all of you are looking forward to hopefully a little bit of a break this week. This webinar is being recorded and it's going to be posted for free to watch on our YouTube channel. So if you find any information in this webinar helpful, you can find the link and share it with your friends and colleagues. If you would like to earn ASA CEUs for attending this webinar, they're available for $6. And you can register with a link that I'm going to put in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and, oh, Amy, it's trying to make me send a message just to you for some reason. There we go. Okay, so I've just put that link in the chat. If you're interested in earning ASA CEUs for attending today, you can use that link to register. If you would like to earn ASA CEUs for today's course, you have to complete the post test in your SLP Nerdcast account, and you have 7 days to complete it. If the post test is not completed within 7 days, we will contact you and remind you, but you may not get a certificate of completion. You have to attend the entire session, and we are monitoring logins and logouts. If you have any technical issues during the webinar, as I mentioned, it's recorded for later viewing, so you can email us at info@slpnerdcast.com to gain access to the recording. I'm also monitoring email while we're talking, hopefully doing two things at once. So if we can help you troubleshoot, if you have any access or if you have any technological difficulties. If you have questions, we're going to be monitoring the Q&A throughout the course of the session, and you can shoot in a question anytime. We'll be answering them throughout. And just as a reminder, because the webinar is being recorded, if you submit a comment or question, we expect that all participants are consenting to the recording, agreeing to our terms of service, and behaving professionally. Okay, boring stuff over. Next slide. What are we talking about today, and why are we bothering to discuss all of this? So the very short answer of the question is that we get questions about continuing education a lot. Tracy, our director of continuing education, can attest to that. She gets all of the emails that I forward over to her. So we wanted to set the record straight, but also we wanted to take a minute to talk about how continuing education is related to not only our ethical code, but how important it is for evidence-based practice. Continuing education in speech pathology is really important. It's one of the main ways that we consume new information. It's one of the main ways we gain new knowledge, and it's one of the main avenues through which we maintain our competence, but also improve our area of competence within our profession. So when you start talking about competence, and you really do start talking about maintaining, staying in compliance with our ethical code and providing therapy that's rooted in evidence. And we're going to go through all of that today. But first, we have to take a minute to do introductions. So Kate, that's me, obviously. My financial disclosures: I'm the owner and founder of Grand Bois Therapy and Consulting LLC and co-founder of SLP Nerdcast. My non-financial disclosures: I'm a member of ASA CEU 12 and I serve on the AAC advisory group for Massachusetts Advocates for Children. I'm also a member of the Berkshire Association for Behavior Analysis and Therapy, Mass ABA, the Association for Behavior Analysis International, and the Corresponding Speech Pathology Applied Behavior Analysis Special Interest Group. Blah. I'm so used to reading that out loud because of the podcast, but I just realized people can probably read it. So maybe you guys don't want to read yours. I'll leave that up to you.
I'll read it just for consistency's sake.
You're just going to make me feel better. That's why.
I'm here. I got your back. I'm an employee of a public school system, and I receive financial compensation as co-founder of SLP Nerdcast. And my non-financial disclosures are that I am also a member of ASA CEU 12, and I serve on the AAC advisory group for Massachusetts Advocates for Children.
All right, I'll read mine too. Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy. I'm the owner of a private practice here in Boston, and I'm the owner of an online learning platform called Guest Monster Games. I'm also employed by SLP Nerdcast as a director of continuing education. So if you're sending emails with questions about that, I'm the person that's receiving those and reading them. My non-financial disclosures, I'm a member of ASA and the corresponding special interest group SIG 13 for dysphagia. And I'm also a certified lactation counselor through the Academy of Lactation Policy and Practice.
Okay, excellent. Our learning objectives. Number one, we're going to describe activities that uphold certification by the American Speech and Hearing Association. Describe the difference between an ASA CEU and certification maintenance hours, also referred to as CMHs, and describe how continuing education intersects with evidence-based practice in the field of speech and language pathology. Okie dokie. So, continuing education, so what? Why should we care? Why do we as speech and language pathologists consume continuing education or PD? Is it because ASA says we have to? Is it because our state license say we have to? And the answer is because of what I already alluded to. Continuing education is directly tied to our competence, which is related both to ethics and evidence-based practice. So first, let's talk a little bit about how continuing education is related to ethics. The most obvious reason is because of competency, as I've mentioned now 4 or 5 times. The word competency, or the word competence rather, shows up in our ethical code 17 times. There are some very specific principles within our ethical code that really highlight the importance of continuing education. And I've listed a couple of them here, and I'm going to read through them very, very briefly and sort of unpack a little bit of how important, of why they're so important. So principle 1A, individuals shall provide all clinical services and scientific activities competently. And this begs the question, what do you do if you aren't competent in an area? How do you define competence? It's a very gray and undefined term. And one of the main ways to improve your competence if you don't feel competent in an area is the obvious of what we're talking about today. It's consuming PD, or professional development. And PD doesn't have to be ASA CEUs, as Tracy will explain in a little bit, but it does mean participating in a structured learning experience where you are the learner. And I'm not going to steal Tracy's thunder because she's going to talk about this in a lot more detail. If you want to learn more about navigating scope of competence, we actually, it was one of the first, I guess it wasn't one of the first, but we did publish a podcast episode about it about, I guess, a little more than a year ago, called But I Don't Know How to Do That, Navigating Scope of Competence in Speech and Language Pathology. We can put a link to that episode in the chat if anyone is interested. The bottom line is that as speech pathologists, our scope of practice is really, really wide. And based on this principle of ethics, we really do need to remain competent, and we can't do that without continuing education. Principle 2A, individuals who hold the certificate of clinical competence shall engage in only those aspects of the profession that are within the scope of their professional practice and competence. Again, this is very similar to the previous principle that I read. This is directly tied to having an area of competence in our field prior to providing clinical services. And then principle 2D, this one really is just incredibly obvious. Individuals shall enhance and refine their professional competence and expertise through engaging in lifelong learning applicable to their professional activities and skills. So you really can't get any more obvious than that. It's directly written in our ethical code that we participate in lifelong learning in the field. And Tracy has just put the link to our podcast course on scope of competence in the chat. Thank you for doing that, Tracy. Okay. So how is continuing education then related to evidence-based practice? Continuing education is our main channel for acquiring new knowledge after graduate school. And it's how we stay up to date on new knowledge and skills in the field. And I don't see how that's possible without some form of consuming professional development, again, where you are the learner. And this is where that last principle of our code of ethics really ties in, because we're ethically bound to engage in lifelong learning, where it ties directly into being up to date with providing services that are rooted in recent up-to-date evidence. As a reminder, our evidence-based practice triangle is 3-pronged. It's comprised of what we typically think of as EBP, That blue bar in the bottom, evidence, that's what people most often think of as our evidence-based practice. But if you look at the subtext in the triangle, evidence is actually broken up into two parts. It's internal and external. External evidence is the research, and internal evidence is very succinctly described as the data we collect on our clients that shows that our treatment is working. There are two other main branches of our EBP triangle that often don't get their time in the sun, so to speak. And those are client perspectives and values and clinical expertise. And just to sort of take a second to think about how these three components relate to how you consume continuing education and the role that continuing education plays in your competence and your evidence-based practice. We often think of PD as a webinar that we sort of stare at, ironically, exactly like this experience, or a conference that we attend where we learn about the most recent research, or we learn from an experienced clinician about the clinical application. But there are a lot of other professional development options that can be used to help you with maintaining your code of ethics and providing services that are rooted in evidence-based practice, like working with a mentor in an independent study that Tracy's going to talk a little bit about too in a minute. What we really wanted to emphasize as part of this webinar is that it's important to remember that when we consume PD, we aren't just doing it because ASHA says we have to earn 30 hours or we have to do some specific amount for our state license. We participate in continuing education because it helps us remain competent. It helps us increase our scope of competence. It helps us remain ethical, and it helps us keep our clinical work rooted in evidence. I think that was the end of my spiel. Amy, you're up.
All right, time for my spiel. Thanks everybody for joining us. I'm going to talk a little bit more about continuing education. And specifically how it helps us make sure that we're working with the best available evidence. And best available evidence is a term that you might find in medical or business literature. And just to keep things confusing, it's also a Medicare Part D policy, in case you happen to be familiar with the term in that context. But really, when we're thinking about best available evidence in terms of professional development and continuing education, I feel like this term really reflects the reality that there aren't enough solidly constructed studies that are published and available for clinicians to access easily that are a perfect match for every clinical situation that we might be seeking guidance about, right? So in reality, even if there were, actual practicing clinicians face so many barriers around incorporating that evidence into our practice. So a few of these challenges might include just the sheer volume of information that's out there. It is physically impossible to read all of the articles, or read all of the books, or attend all of the conferences. It's unrealistic and logistically impossible to devote all of your waking hours to doing that. There's also a real mismatch between research and practice. So as a practitioner, I find a lot of the research studies that are out there don't exactly match my clients, or don't exactly match my work environment or the communication tasks that I'm focused on. So even if there is a study that sort of points the clinician in a specific direction, it can be really difficult or even impossible to translate that information that you've read about, a research study into a meaningful change in your clinical practice. What does that actually mean for your client? Resources are a limiter for a lot of us. Most continuing education opportunities, many continuing education opportunities, depending on your work environment, are completely self-funded. So most of us don't have unlimited money. Most of us don't have unlimited time that we can just spend freely on professional development opportunities. And then there's also a piece around our learning style and our learning needs. As adult learners, we all have different learning methods that are going to work best for our lives, best for our interests, and best for our unique needs as adult learners. So, what does that mean? Where do continuing education and evidence-based practice intersect? Well, there's a cool article I found. The Schmidt and Justice 2012 article in the Pearson Evidence-Based Practice Brief, that there's a citation for that at the end of the presentation too, if you want to check it out, because these authors discuss at length the process of evidence-based practice, and they discuss it as one in which, like Kate said, the patient values and needs, our clinical expertise, and then the current research are all considered and evaluated. And the authors make the point that this is really an ongoing and dynamic process, and I want to quote them here. They say clinicians should continuously seek new information to improve therapy efficacy. So the idea that this learning, yes, it's something we need to do to maintain our certification with ASHA. It's something we need to do to maintain our respective licensure in our states. But it's also something that we need to do on an ongoing basis. It's not something that stops. We keep doing it. We keep doing it. If you're going to read one article after this webinar, I recommend it be this one. It's pretty short, it's very doable, and the authors do a great job outlining the process of evidence-based practice. So as a clinician, what actual steps can I engage in to help move me through this process of evidence-based practice? Some key takeaways for me were that the more we learn as clinicians, and again, this is probably very related to having the opportunity for meaningful continuing education experiences, but the more we're able to learn, the more our skills are going to grow. And a key element to effective evidence-based practice is being able to form clinically relevant, answerable questions. So it's not just reading the research. It's not just listening to a webinar. It's not just reading a book or going to a conference. It's doing those things with a specific clinical question in mind that you're trying to answer with that information that you're getting. And when we learn more as clinicians, we're not only better able to answer those questions that we're formulating about our clients, we're better able to generate those questions in the first place. We're better able to know what types of questions we're engaging in this continuing education to answer so that we can better do our jobs. So what do we do? Kate mentioned some of this. Tracy's going to talk to you more about it. But there are a lot of different places where we can access new information as clinicians. So some things to think about are being aware of systematic research reviews. So ASHA has the NCEP, which they're using as sort of a clearinghouse to go through and synthesize some of this research and make it more accessible and digestible for clinicians. You may have heard of places like the Informed SLP or Pearson's EBP briefs. You may know, you may have gone through and found, if you've listened to us, you know that I love a meta-analysis because the researchers kind of do the research on the research for me. So I can go in and kind of read the aggregate of, some of the different studies that are out there. It can be helpful to read the research, and just a tip that people might not be aware of. A lot of research articles are kind of locked behind a paywall. And often if you read an abstract and it looks good, if you contact an author, they may be able to share with you a full text copy if you just ask. There's obviously educational podcasts, right? And webinars, and then conferences, postgraduate coursework. So there are a lot of different options to choose from when you're sort of trying to engage in that evidence-based practice and find the answers to these clinical questions that you've formulated.
Let's see, Trace.
All right, I was hitting unmute, sorry. All right, so the part of the course that I'm going to talk about is, what is an ASHA CEU? I think that this particular topic is one that I get emails about quite frequently. So what is an ASHA CEU? Many times we refer to coursework sort of colloquially as, oh, I'm going to do a CEU, I'm going to take a CEU, but an ASHA CEU is actually it's a standardized unit of measurement for participating in continuing education. So the standardized unit of measurement was created by ASHA. So whenever you're looking at a course and you're curious if it's offered for ASA CEUs, it would need to have ASHA. It needs to have that acronym before it, ASHA, and then CEU after. There are many other standardized units as well. Occupational therapists have one as well, but for speech pathologists, it's the ASA CEU. That's the standardized unit of measurement, but it's not the only standardized unit of measurement. So ASA CEU is 10 contact hours is 1 ASA CEU. Many times people think that 1 ASA CEU is 1 hour, but 1.0 ASA CEUs, that's 10 hours. So if you have 1 hour of continuing education, that would be 0.1 ASA CEUs. I know this is a little bit dry, guys, but stick with me. All right, next slide. All right, great. So sometimes you'll see courses that are offered for a CMH. So a CMH is going to be 60 minutes spent in a professional development activity where you're a learner and a participant in that activity. CMHs are accumulated through participation in non-ASA CEU activities. That's the big difference, is that there are 2 different unit of measurements, and a CMH will be offered by a non-ASA CE provider. So SLP Nerdcast is an ASA CE provider. There are many other ASA CE providers out there, but if the course is offered for CMHs only and not for ASA CEUs, then this is just a completely different unit of measurement. And at the end of the course here, there's a bunch of links to the ASA website that will kind of explain this a little bit more. And next slide. All right, so now it's everybody's favorite subject, math. So 1 CEU, so 1 ASA CEU is equal to 10 CMHs. A CMH is offered in hours, so 60 minutes, and 1 ASA CEU, 1.0 ASA CEUs, that's going to be 10 hours. So it's purely a math thing. So if you took a course that was 60 minutes, that would be for 0.1 ASA CEU. And if it was 60 minutes for CMHs, it would be 1 CMH. For ASA continuing education, we are required to do 3.0 hours at 3.0 ASA CEUs per certificate maintenance, and that would be 30 CMHs. Like I said, it's pretty dry. All right, next slide. So how do we uphold our ASA Cs? So ASA outlines on their website in their frequently asked questions section that there are four things that need to be done by an ASA certified speech pathologist. And one is to abide by the ASA Code of Ethics. And Kate and Amy spoke earlier about one way to uphold the ASA Code of Ethics is to participate in continuing education. The ASA Code of Ethics is available on ASHA's website if you would like more information on the specifics of the ASA Code of Ethics. 2 is that we need to pay our annual dues, and it's just about that time, at the end of November. We've probably all received that email that it's time to pay our dues. So to be a member of ASHA, we do need to pay the dues. The 3rd thing is to accumulate 30 certification maintenance hours, CMHs. And that's actually directly from the ASHA website. It does not say that you need to accumulate 3.0 ASHA CEUs. It says that we need to do 30 CMHs for each 3-year interval. And then starting in the January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2022 interval period, at least one of those hours must be in the area of ethics. And then the 4th thing to uphold our ASHA Cs is to submit a certificate maintenance compliance form as verification. And this is, I think, where a lot of people get confused. This is where the ASHA registry comes in. What is the role of the registry? So if you pay for the ASHA registry, which is optional, it is not required. if you pay for the ASA CE registry, and if you accrue all 30 hours, and those 30 hours are for ASA CEUs, and those are submitted to the ASA registry by the ASA CE provider. So for us, it's SLP Nerdcast. The form will automatically be submitted for you. So if you're thinking to yourself, I've never had to sign anything. I've always gotten my 30 hours and they've always been for ASA CEUs and I've never needed to sign anything. I have no idea what you're talking about. That's because if you belong to the ASA CE registry, then it automatically submits for you. If you keep track of your own professional development, so that might be a combination of ASA CEUs, CMHs, and some other things that I'll chat about in a minute, you would need to submit what's called the compliance form. And on that compliance form, you would need to document what the different professional development was. And it's a good idea to keep track of all of that, regardless, even if you use the registry in case of an audit. It's just good to have that information. So I know that this is not terribly interesting, but if you've been wondering why some people pay for the registry and why not, it would be specifically for this reason. There are some other additional benefits to SLPs that choose to participate in the registry. And those benefits can be found on the ASA website, one of which is if you accumulate, I think it's 70 hours within a specific time frame, you can get what's called the ASA ACE award. And there are other sort of benefits from there, but it is not required to participate in the ASA CE registry. That is something that is left up to the speech pathologist. All right, next slide. All right, so what activities can count towards professional development, towards maintaining ASA certification? And there are lots of different activities that can count. All of these are documented on ASHA's website. And something that I think people would be surprised to hear is that there is no pre-approval necessary for participation in professional development that can be used to maintain ASHA certification. So there's no pre-approval necessary. This is written directly on their website as well. So you don't need to obtain any prior approval from ASHA for activities that you choose, as long as the professional development one will contribute to your knowledge and your professional development. And two, it will lead to acquiring and enhancing your knowledge required for SLP practice. There are a list of things here that are accepted ASHA activities. So courses that are offered for CMHs. So if you have taken a course, you really loved it, but it wasn't offered for ASHA CEUs, you participated in the entirety of the course, you received a certificate. That certificate says it was offered for one CMH for one contact hour that could be used to maintain ASHA certification. What you would need to do is keep track of that on that maintenance form, which is available on ASHA's website, and hold on to that certificate and keep track of that yourself. Some other things that could count would be an employer-sponsored in-service. Somebody comes in to talk about something that relates specifically to your area of work, grand rounds for people that are in the medical profession, teacher-oriented content, so things that are maybe more geared towards teachers but do apply to school-based SLPs, college or university coursework, though I will say that it is becoming more popular for college coursework to also be offered for ASHA CEUs. And I know SLP Nerdcast is looking into that. There are a few other organizations as well. And then there's something that Kate is very jazzed about, which is called the independent study. And the information on what an independent study is, again, is available on the ASHA website. But the independent study allows the learner to curate a learning experience specifically to what they need to learn. So they make a list of goals, they develop their own learning outcomes, they figure out how they will meet those learning outcomes and how it will be evaluated. There is a form that people would need to fill out. All the information is on the ASHA website. SLP Nerdcast is able to sponsor independent studies for people who are listening and think, that sounds like exactly what I want. The other thing that's really great about independent study is you can choose one that's geared towards your learning style. So some people find that they can listen, but reading is more difficult. There's a lot more flexibility with that. And within that could also be some mentorship. So finding somebody who is really knowledgeable in a field that you'd like to learn more about. And then one of the requirements is, if you are interested in an independent study, is that you do need to pay the ASHA registry fee. So that's another sort of benefit of paying the ASHA CE registry fee, is you are able to document and participate in the independent study. So things that are not accepted are listed there. Unfortunately, it seems like I have left an O capitalized, so volunteer work there, just general work experience that you're getting paid for, a business meeting, clinical work, membership, those sorts of things aren't accepted. However, if you were to combine these sorts of things in a very structured way as part of an independent study, part of that might be able to count towards maintaining your ASHA Cs. So I got the very dry end of information here. But if people have questions at the end of the presentation, all of the links for where you can find this information on the ASHA website will be listed there, or you can send an email to me and I can help point you in the right direction. This information is dry and confusing, but I have read it so many times. I think we've got a pretty good handle on it, so we can help you out. So feel free to reach out to us if you have questions.
It's dry, but it's important. And I think it's people need to be informed consumers about how they consume their PD to make their jobs better, so that they're better at their jobs and their clinical work is improved. So I didn't think it was dry. I thought it was great. You did a great job. Does anyone have any questions before we sign off? We're so glad everybody was able to make it. And we know it's sort of at least late in the evening here on the East Coast, but if anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. If not, thank you guys so much for joining us. And again, if there's information here that you thought was helpful, there will be a link available for free on our YouTube channel to look for it, so you can pass it around. And if you are participating for ASHA CEUs, now that you know what that is, not that you didn't before, you can take the post-test sometime in the next 7 days and let us know if you have any questions. You guys have anything else?
No, thank you.
No, thanks for coming. Yep.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.